I suspected that there could have been an ambush for me on the way back, so we drove through rural areas and took a route that no one would ambush us on. And you know, a lot of very, very dangerous things happen when you're not actually filming. For example, also making that film, I mean, there's too many hundreds of stories to tell you. Like, basically my life is Russian roulette. Almost every day I'm in the field, I'm getting my life threatened. But one day I'd lent my car to someone, and so I had to catch a taxi, and in Peshawar there are these taxis that trawl for people that they can kidnap. They would never think that they'd get an Australian because there are no Westerners there, but they get people who've got a little bit of money and they go after the ransom. So I was kidnapped by a couple of kidnappers who were probably there for the money, but they were connected with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And suddenly I had two gunmen on either side of me. And I was just very calm, and I explained that I give talks at Peshawar University on Islamic history and you know, how important it is to be a bridge, and I mentioned all the professors at the university I work with and then the families that love me. And gradually the kidnappers realised that if they hurt me, the sky would fall on them. Not from the Americans or someone, or the CIA or ISI or any of these organisations, but just from the people that they live with in Peshawar. And my people would get them, you know. So they took me back, and I had an apology. But like, that's how it is, you know. It's you know, yeah. And constantly I'm going to the front line of fighting with soldiers and dodging bullets as much as any soldier does, but I haven't got a gun, I've just got my camera. I think painting is very, very important, and you see this, like, all the paintings are based pretty well on drawings that I do in the field. And normal people think that if you're taking film with a movie camera or still camera, that you can be a bit like a vulture, preying on their misery. But if you actually sit down and you draw someone, children will come from everywhere, everyone loves to watch someone draw. And what are you doing? You're exposing your inner self when you draw. You know, the people, when you take a photograph, can't see what's inside the camera. And when they're looking at this drawing, they can see how you see them. And, you know, I see them with a lot of love, and they see that love. And then I turn these drawings later into paintings. And then there's another aspect. Quite often, there are two kinds of drawings. There are the drawings that I'll do of victims and children, hurt people. Quite often, I'll have called for assistance because someone's been shot or wounded, and as a way of calming them, I'll draw them. And that makes them feel special. It's like a hairdresser doing your hair or something. You've got all your focus on them, and once again it's a way of showing that you care. Usually I have to do two drawings. I have to give one to them and keep one myself, almost always. And if you're some poor African or someone in Palestine or somewhere where no one's ever given a damn about you, and suddenly you've got an artist who's using all of his talent to express you, that means a lot more than just click a photograph, where the photographer can take the photograph, and then while I'm doing the drawing, the people tell me their stories. And I always write their stories on the sides of the drawings, you know, or in my diaries. And the stories to me are just as important as the drawings. In fact, I had an exhibition that toured South Africa, which was organised by Nelson Mandela, because I'd done so much work in South Africa. And I get tired of the question where people say, are your paintings therapy? My paintings aren't really therapy, because usually I do the paintings, unlike the drawings, I do them back in a studio. And when I'm doing the painting, they're often about a thing like a massacre in Rwanda, so it's horrible for me. It brings back all the pain of what I've experienced, and I put that into the painting. But when I'm away, I'm by myself, and I've got my diaries. And so I was in this gallery, I think it was in Durban, and some wonderful school teachers, they're all black kids, all black Africans, were there, and the children were saying to me, are your paintings therapy? And I didn't want to say no, they're not. And then suddenly this big, beautiful, wise old lady who was standing there, who'd been watching and listening, she helped me out of my dilemma, and she said, "I know it's not the paintings, it will be the writing. You must write." And I said, "Yes, I write." And that's what it is. So often I'll be in a massacre or something incredibly horrendous, and I've got no one to talk to. I'm in incredible spiritual pain myself over what I've seen. It's enough to send a person mad seeing the things I see, and I write. And I get it all out. And then after I've written, I can sleep. It's the writing that's the therapy. But I've loved painting since I was a child. And, you know, my greatest pleasure is to visit museums and see art. And I'd like to feel that I created some paintings that people could go and see in museums. And instead of it, say, being Matisse, which is about luxury and wealth, I'd like my paintings to be about the troubles of people in places like Northern Ireland, the poorest areas of Belfast, or Somalia or Cambodia. I just want to place art about those kinds of subjects in these museums, which are normally about luxury and decoration and investment and that kind of stuff. Like, my paintings don't sell. No one's ever going to buy GITTOES put on their wall as a decoration. The few people who have ever bought my work and put them on the walls, everyone who comes to their house says, "We couldn't live with that. How can you live with that?" And so yeah, I think it's very important to do art that is about the human condition, and says that artists are not put on this world to create investment product or to create decoration, or, as I call it, to create flat wall furniture. Artists are here to look at what it is to be human and why we do what we do.
Do that?
Well, I think it's a spiritual thing. I made Bullets of the Poets in Nicaragua because I was attracted to Nicaraguan poetry, Ernesto and the Sandinista poets. They called themselves the externalist poets. And I fell in love with Central America. I could imagine, if it was a perfect world and I could say where I would like to spend my last days, it would be somewhere in Central America. I just love it. And it's this combination of...
Do you know Central America?
Well, I know Nicaragua and El Salvador and those places. I wanted to know more about Central America, but I put a lot, I risked my life a lot in Nicaragua during that revolutionary period when they were fighting the Contra. So I have a deep attachment to it. So for the last, since I last worked in Nicaragua in 1986, I haven't been back there for 14 years. Wait a minute, it's longer than that. 1986, I haven't been back there for almost, 24 years. It's a long time, isn't it? 1986.
Yes.
For
more than 24 years.
24 years. No, it's 24 years. Yeah. So my son was just born before I went off to make Bullets of the Poets. So my time away from Nicaragua and the Central America is as long as my son's life. Anyway, so many things are now happening, like Chavez in Venezuela interests me.
Why Venezuela interests you?
Well, one of the main reasons is that in a lot of places, the best peacekeepers in places like the Congo, who've had the deepest thoughts and have been most effective, Western Sahara, have been Venezuela, and we've become very good friends. And so that's, you know, when you're at war with someone in dangerous situations, you get very close to them and their country and their thoughts and their philosophy, and I've always loved it. So there's that, but I think the revolution that's happened in Venezuela, obviously I've got to cover it at some point. As I can't have covered Polisario and the IRA and the Khmer Rouge and Mandela and the ANC. I can't ignore Venezuela. Venezuela can't be ignored. I have to work in Venezuela at some point. But before I can do that, I've got to finish covering this terrible war in Afghanistan. The reason why I'm in Texas at the moment is because I'm interested in this whole region, and of course the interaction between America and countries like Venezuela and Mexico and Bolivia is a huge part of it. So I'm spending 6 months preparing an exhibition which will tour around America